Thank you. Lunch was excellent. I really appreciate that. It's good to be back up here. If you weren't here this morning, my name is Michael Lotas. I'm the Chief Cybersecurity Architect for General Dynamics Fidelis. I'm also the Director for our International Cybersecurity Services Group. What we're going to talk about today is lessons learned from large breaches. I showed this slide this morning, so we'll just burn by it. One of the things that's come out in our business area is that data security is rapidly becoming the #1 concern of directors and general counsel. As we operate, we do a lot of incident response, we do a lot of proactive services. We're dealing with counsel, the board of directors, external third-party counsel, including 10 or 15 of the 20 largest law firms globally. And data security right now is really, really a hot topic. Now, the concern is driven both by cost and reputational impact. So most of the large breaches that we operate on, I can't even discuss. They're still under attorney-client privilege, and if you know the lawyers that we've worked with, I don't want to talk about it. TJX is one that was actually in the news. I worked TJX personally. I led the containment remediation, the forensics, and all the site surveys. They had a 46 million credit card, debit card numbers stolen. Now, they spent $132 million on expenses related to the breaches. They were looking at a liability of over $2 billion, $2 billion US dollars. We got it down, working with external counsel in our investigation, down to the $132 million. But $2 billion for almost any company is a significant threat to their operational model. One of the interesting notes here is this was not an APT attack. It was a fairly sophisticated attack. Now, APT is a who, not a what. We'll get into more of that a little bit later. But we did actually get arrests and convictions against the criminals. If you Google TJX, General Dynamics, and look at some of the posts out there, Albert Gonzalez was very upset with us because he thought he was doing a great job hacking into TJX, and we almost caught him in the act. Another, this is great, I don't have to sit here. Another example of a large breach that we worked was a breach that actually, it was fairly sophisticated methodology they used to gain access to the enterprise. What was interesting was they've used the information that they stole from the company to create ATM cards, and they coordinated $10 million being withdrawn from ATMs in 24 hours in 200 to 300 cities worldwide. This was a global effort. They had cashiers that used the counterfeit cards and pins, and while they had access to the enterprise, they were raising the limits and allowing multiple same-day withdrawals. So they actually had access to the databases that controlled the ATM cards. This was also the first exploitation of HSMs to derive pins. And this was another example where the FBI came out and said this was how incident responses should be handled. TJX was actually the first one that not only did law enforcement say this is how a breach should be handled, the PCI Council, which manages, it's basically card brands, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, their security and the regulations they put down on banks or retail companies that handle credit card transactions, they came back and said this was the best example of a PCI incident response they'd seen, and they actually borrowed material that I provided them, and they're using it in their training and certification now. Now this is a very interesting slide, and it's a very simple slide, but it's interesting. If you look on here, the attack vectors, and I'm not actually sure where exactly we got these numbers from, but assuming they're accurate, 35% SQL injection, 30% spear phishing, 15% insider, 15% advanced attacks, 5% wireless. I would actually dispute, and this is my own slide, and so it's kind of silly, but I would dispute the 15% advanced attacks. If we think of APT as a who, a bad actor, usually attributed to one or two countries out there, they actually use all of these attack vectors. And they use all of them because they don't need to use the advanced attacks. If they can get in with SQL injection, they use the lowest bar, the easiest route in that they can. Does not mean they're going to blow a 0-day to gain access to your enterprise. If they can get in with SQL injection, spear phishing, leveraging an insider, even physical or wireless, close proximity access, they'll use that. The advanced attacks are usually very rare, very targeted, and only for the large whales or larger potential customers. Now, one of the things that most folks say is, but I'm protected against malware attacks. As you can see in here, we found that on the first few days that a new piece of malware or a new virus Trojan comes out, it's a very low detection rate, about a 17%, 19% average across all of the antivirus vendors. It takes them about 20 to 30 days before they're really starting to hit their stride and catching that particular piece of virus or malware. What that does is that gives the intruders a window up in here somewhere of about 20 days, maybe 15, before the malware that they're using is going to be detected, potentially. Maybe detected sooner, maybe not. But they at least have a solid 2-3 days before it's being detected. That's significant. Well, this doesn't matter. We'll skip those. That's significant because that's giving them time to operate on your enterprise, gain a foothold, and then gain access to your enterprise without using additional malware. So they'll be using the same tools that your administrators use. They'll use legal authorized accounts, just they're unauthorized to use them. They'll use your VPN to gain access. They'll look just like a normal user other than the malicious activity. One of the things as we've gone through, and we've run dozens and dozens and dozens of these myself, I mean hundreds and thousands for the company, but I've been on dozens, is that there are various attack phases that are common throughout most of the attacks that are out there. Infiltration and intelligence gathering, they can flip-flop back and forth. Usually before infiltration, they're going to do some sort of open source research, some recon. Then they'll try to do an infiltration on your enterprise. When they do that, they're going to spread out a little bit and try to do some intelligence gathering. What's the layout of the land? What kind of security controls do you have in place? What's your network architecture? They're going to do some data characterization for you and try to identify your key critical cyber assets. Then they're going to start pushing out their malware or their authorization, their access across the network through lateral propagation or network traversing. As they're doing that, it's iterative. They're doing intelligence gathering on the way as well. At some point, they're going to start development of customized malware if they need to. If they don't, they'll use standard off-the-shelf malware. A lot of times what we're seeing is that they're using malware from the same family, and as you saw before, there's anti-forensics techniques. What they're customizing is the anti-forensics techniques and obfuscation, making it very, very difficult to detect what the malware is doing. A lot of times a rat is really just using netcat or socat type functionality. After they develop their customized malware, whatever it is, could be a memory scraper, they're going to start doing testing on that. The testing that they do may or may not be off-site. Often we've seen that they're doing their testing of malware on-site, either in your QA and development environments or in your production environments. They're actually going to help you administer your environments while they're testing their malcode. They're going to go out and do data collection and aggregation based on their analysis of your environment. They're going to collect your key critical data assets, whether it's intellectual property from development, if you've got geological or geographical surveys, they're going to collect that. They're going to pull it back to a centralized point, and then they're going to try to exfiltrate it. Now, in the past, what they used to do is they would push it over to a single repository and try to do a large bolus or a large push of data and get out before the alerts or events could be noticed by your security personnel. When they start to do that, normally it's around a holiday season. Holiday seasons are coming up. They have ruined every holiday that I've had for the last 7 years or so and about half my vacations, because they plan it around the same time my kids are out of school. Now what they're doing, though, which is good for me, is they're doing exfiltration in a slower, more controlled manner throughout their entire time in your enterprise. And then they're going to wipe their tracks. It doesn't mean that they're going to leave your enterprise. That means they're going to wipe the tracks of their malicious activity. They may still be on there, they'll just be an admin. And by the way, I've actually seen them as the admin remediate and close trouble tickets that they thought the actual admins would notice, and so they were out there tuning the enterprise and the network for the folks and closing trouble tickets. In here, really, what you want to look at or take away from this, if you can see it, is the top is the attacker timeline, and it's the time to compromise, milliseconds to minutes. They're very fast now. A lot of attacks are automated, they've done their homework, they know what's out there, and they have specialized teams that will build an attack package specifically for your enterprise. They have experts in firewalls, databases, Windows, Linux, etc., and they'll come up with a package and implement it very quickly. Time to exfiltration could be minutes to days. An exfiltration window could be months to years, and that's representing the new lower and slower exfiltration methodology. One of the problems is on the defender timeline, time to prevention, milliseconds to minutes. So if you have automated tools or technology in place, whatever it may be, IPS, firewall, data loss prevention, you've got milliseconds to minutes to stop the attacker's attack. But the time to discovery is generally months to years before people even notice that they've been hacked or intruded upon. And as we said earlier on in the morning, it's not necessarily a technology problem, it's a people and process problem that you need to fix months to years and try to get that down to minutes to days. Technology will help automate some of that, but you've got to have the trained personnel and you have to have the processes around there and the support for those personnel. Time to containment, days to weeks. That's still, we've managed to go from weeks to days for the most part after a few years in experience, and we have some frameworks that we're using to do that. Most normal companies with their on-site security team, it's still going to be days to weeks. Some training, some frameworks, a little bit of help might help that. So obviously you want to prevent the initial compromise if possible. You want to compress or eliminate the data exfiltration window by reducing the time to discovery and time to containment. You really, the time to discovery is the long pole in the tent, and that's what's killing us all right now. And speed matters, you're in a race with the attacker. let's just burn through this. What this is showing is kind of the iteration. I have one more now. Yep, okay. Of an attack and how the intruder was going through. And you can see they started with a memory scraper and dump utilities that were pretty generic. And they went through a whole development process and started doing testing over here. One of the problems that they had was that in development 1, development 2, you see there's a very long kind of development cycle there. These were not the A-team developers. These were not the A-team hackers. They were actually having a lot of difficulty getting their code working. If you look further on down on the right side, they brought in some specialists who came in and rewrote everything, completely different language, and very, very quickly got the code up, operational, data captured, and data exfilled. So they're not afraid if someone gets initial access and their team isn't operating well, they'll move on and bring someone else in. And it's important to note that the attackers these days, this is a real business. These guys have an office building. They walk in the office every day, 9 to 5, say hi to the receptionist, grab a cup of coffee in the break room, sit down in their cube or in their office, and start hacking and having fun with your enterprise. They have PTO, retirement accounts, health insurance. This is an actual business now for a lot of these folks. So one of the things you want to do, and as we said this morning, it's an ongoing process. It never stops. You want to get these people engaged, or at least not the law enforcement necessarily, and this is US based. But you want to get these folks engaged in at least part of the process as early as humanly possible. So for us being consultants on the client side, you're going to want all the stakeholders buying in. And we've got executives, technology owners, business operations, as well as counsel, internal and external. External is usually going to be a third party. I would highly suggest that if you're a commercial company, that you consider getting external legal counsel to complement your internal counsel. It's very helpful, and that's not something without experience most internal counsel people can operate with, an intrusion. It's good to get someone with experience. That's your core team along with potentially external consultants, third-party folks, and then law enforcement. It's key, though, getting this team pulled together rapidly, quickly, and you want them involved with everything. One of the other things that we've noticed as we've been operating in this space is the threat intelligence. And that's, I don't know if it shows up well for you. We need to go deeper. That's a reference to Inception. I think that's Leonardo DiCaprio. So traditionally now, is this a bad URL address file? Is this command and control traffic? And we're done. What we'd like to do is what will happen to us if somebody clicks, visits, talks? What else has been impacted by this URL IP malware? Or who else, excuse me. And the who else is industry-wide. It could be in your same vertical, it could be across verticals. You want to start collaborating, and we're doing that now, and I think there's a slide coming up to show that. We need more collaboration and cooperation between industry partners. So who else has been impacted? What happened to those folks and how did they solve it? That actually saves you a lot of time. If you can find someone else who's been hit by the same bad actor or the same malware, and you can get their notes so they'll talk to you and tell you how they resolve that issue, that can really help reduce down the remediation time from weeks, days, to maybe even hours. And if you're aware of who else has been impacted by this URL IP malware before it impacts you, it can help reduce your time to detection dramatically as well. Was there a compromise? Where, when? Who is the perpetrator of this attack? Who are their other victims? What does the perpetrator want? Did they get to what they want? In other words, we really need to start getting a broader, deeper view with intelligence. So we can start making decisions based on wisdom, which is doing the right thing or what is best. All the information in the world's not going to help us unless we know what to do with it, and that's where wisdom or being experienced and wise comes into play. So one of the things that we were involved with was the Shaman Recovery. And you may or may not have heard of the Shaman malware that came out. When that hit, we were not engaged. I was in San Antonio. Our other folks were in our Columbia lab. And it hit, and it was concerning to all of us. Everyone was getting spun up, and we're all wondering what's going to happen because it impacted a large number of systems for a very large company. What we did is, just to prepare in case we ever got engaged, was we got a copy of the malware and looked at it to see exactly what it did. And the fear is that Shaman was actually blowing away the systems completely and wiping out and reformatting all the data. In reality, what it was doing is it was removing one of the indexes to the data, and so it looked as if the disk had been wiped. It actually had not been. Our guys went and figured out how to recover or restore the bulk of the data. When they did that, we went ahead and we've got a little I love us thing at the bottom, threatgeek.com. We went ahead and posted it, contacted the company, said this is how to recover your data, here's the procedures, and then we posted it out there for industry-wide publication. That was just a service we put out there as kind of one of the things that we're trying to advocate for, is that as professionals, when we know something that's not proprietary or sensitive to a customer, we should try to share it. And if other people do the same thing, it's better for all of us, and we can reduce that time to detection and definitely reduce the remediation containment time. As FBI Director Mueller said, there's only two types of organizations, those that have been hacked and those that will be. I actually think we're leading far more towards those that have been hacked. I'm not sure I've seen an entity that has not been hacked, that's been on the web for more than 4 or 5 years. Maybe if you're brand new, you haven't been hacked, but then you're falling into the category that you will be. The state-sponsored hackers are patient calculating. It's not just the state-sponsored hackers. Organized crime, those folks are patient and calculating as well. So these are some of the services we offer. We touched on them this morning. Security architecture and engineering, security policy development, security strategy workshops, threat identification, vulnerability assessment, breach indicator BI assessments. Those are kind of a canned offering we have. They're very fast, couple weeks. Penetration testing, network hardening, compliance assessment, verification, incident response planning and training. I would highly suggest, just based on our experience and what we've seen with large breaches, the more services like this that you engage early before an incident, the less likely it is that the incident is going to be a major one for you. You'll have more insight, more understanding of your enterprise, and you'll be able to catch the intruders in a more efficacious manner. Breach indicator assessment, you put expert eyes on the network to determine if indicators of compromise have been missed. And this goes back to, as we talked about this morning, we have an operational model of distrust, not a model of trust. So we employ different sensors than what's currently on the enterprise. They'll be our sensors, we'll bring them in. We may use some advanced sensors, we sell one.
Remind you, Mr. Thomas, you got only 5 minutes left. So
Okay.
you could wrap up your session, please.
Let's see. Let's go back right quick. So one of the things with the breach indicator assessment, the breach may or may not be active, but the intruder tools are there for them to come back to. We're looking for both historical as well as real-time evidence of an intrusion, whether it's ongoing or in the past. We do some system analysis, we do some log analysis, and then we're also looking at current network traffic, user behavior, user activity. We do a baseline and look for anomalous behavior. Okay. And a summary. Attackers are attempting to or have breached your network. One detected alert is not the end of the story. Your enterprise infrastructure needs your help. And we have to be as tenacious as the adversary. And if you need help doing that, bring in a third-party consultant. You can see the picture there. That's actually, now that's a couple years old now. It's probably second gen. But that's the CyberSock that we bring out. It's a 10U box, number of servers in there, sensors. We deploy our malware as well as Snort, our SIM. Everything's self-contained in that box. We trust nothing. A lot of folks go onto an incident response and they plug their laptops or the tools on a compromised network. We have a completely separate one. The bottom box is actually UPSs. We don't even trust the power. Thank you. We'll have questions later on. My phone number and email address if anyone would like to contact me. And I am on LinkedIn. Thank you much.